You can barely see me. How beautiful. Anyways, welcome to something that I'm gonna call Facts in the Dark, because as you can see, it's quite dark. It's a little bit before midnight, and I'm awake because my body is deciding it wants to be awake tonight. I'm a little bit tired now because I've just spoken about being awake. I'm gonna read off this fact sheet that I have here about a place that I've been, and maybe one day this might become a very weird series. But that's mostly up to you. Also, I look terrible from this angle. That's no better. I am a green gremlin of terrible. Anyways, let's begin, shall we? Anyways, alright, today we're doing a lot about Port Arthur. I'm going to teach you about Port Arthur. Alright, Port Arthur started as a small timber station in 1830, and then in 1833, this is boring. In 1833, it became a punishment station for repeat offenders. Throughout the 1840s, the convict population reached up to 1,100 people and quickly exceeded it before the end of the decade. In 1842, a huge flour mill and granary was built. The granary would later become the penitentiary, and construction of the hospital would start in the same year. In 1848, they began to build a separate prison, which would shift the punishment from that of a physical nature to far more psychological. Port Arthur was an industrial prison, meaning prisoners were made to manufacture goods such as ships, shoes, metals, timber, and bricks. Supposedly, the most punishing of these jobs was timber getting. This involved cutting down excessively large logs before using a saw pit to be cut into smaller sections. A saw pit worked by having one convict stand on top of a log while the other worked in the pit, ending up with sawdust in his orifices. I wrote this. Once the log was cut into a beam, a team of 50 convicts carried the log on their shoulders back to the main settlement. In the 1860s, Port Arthur entered its welfare phase. During this time, the asylum was built. The asylum was built next to the separation prison on the southern side of the site and housed many patients or ex-prisoners that were now suffering from depression or mental disabilities. Port Arthur stopped accepting convicts in 1877. Let's talk a little bit about punishment, because this video is going to be nice and short and brief and beautiful for you. The separation prison was used to house convicts that continuously committed crime while on the peninsula. They wore hooded cloaks over their face and were not allowed to speak at all. The convicts were locked in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day, only allowed out for exercise and mandatory church services. There was a second area of confinement for those who just couldn't shut up. Prisoners were locked inside soundproof pitch-black rooms for sometimes up to a month. Outside of the separation prison, the cat o' nine tails was in use. The cat o' nine tails was a whip that had 9 different strips of leather that had a bunch of, knots tied in it. I did talk about it anyways. Convicts were tied against the wall in the open for their peers to watch as they were repeatedly thrashed with a whip with 9 leather strips. Each strip had a varying number of knots tied in it. This particular whip was soaked in salt water to stiffen the leather and was said to sting so painfully the people blacked out. Once whipped, the convicts were left outside to just sit. Nice. That's all I wrote, but it was also a bit here that Port Arthur's in Tasmania, in Hobart. It's an hour and a half out of Hobart, so at the bottom of Tasmania. I'll probably put a map up. Maybe I won't. Anyways, if you liked this little short me reading of a piece of paper written in size 11 font, give it a thumbs up and tell me that I should make more of these. I will probably make more of them anyways, because they're quite interesting. Anyways, bye nerds.